May it please the court. My name is Jake Toda, co-counsel for the defendant, Devin Kelmar. As my co-counsel, Frank Saldana, said in the opening statement, the focus for our case is self-defense. Did Devin act in self-defense when he shot Corey Jackson? The evidence shows that the answer to this question is yes. He did act in self-defense. Corey Jackson was out to kill Devin. How do we know this? Well, let's look at the evidence. Some things you heard today that Mr. Jackson was described to have done to Devin are as follows. 1. He had been cussing at Devin for several months. 2. He'd been picking on him for over a year. 3. He hurt Devin in forms of physical abuse and gave him bruises. 4. He almost ran Devin over with his car. 5. He falsely accused Devin of stealing a teacher's wallet just to get Devin in trouble. And 6. The most horrific of all these, he made death threats towards my client, which made him fear for his life. But what Corey didn't stop there. Earlier, we asked Vice Principal Lyndon Murphy about Corey Jackson, and this is what he told us. He described Corey as a hothead with a violent disposition. He said that Corey constantly fought with other students. He regularly skipped classes, and when he was in class, most of the time he was drunk. Corey was sent to Vice Principal Murphy's office numerous times. And Murphy had even heard rumors that Corey carried a switchblade with him. Corey's actions towards Devin is what led to the night of February 26, 2013. On that night, when Devin faced Corey, the one and only witness who had a clear and unobstructed view of the scene was Lyndon Murphy. Vice Principal Murphy stated that he was only 6 parking spaces away from the scene, with his view blocked by no cars, no trees, nothing. He claims he saw Devin and Corey Jackson arguing. Then Corey, who was drunk at the time, and this is confirmed by the coroner's report, lunged at Devin. Devin, fearing for his life, pulled out his gun and fired 2 shots out of self-defense. These shots were only seconds apart. Does that sound like murder to you, ladies and gentlemen? The prosecution states that Kendall Lynch is the key eyewitness to this case, but he's the less credible of the two. Kendall, driving and distracted, saw with fogged windows Devin kneel down and shoot Corey point blank in the head. Kendall said in his witness statement that he was sure of this. Yet, the thing that strikes me as odd is that Kendall can see through the car to Devin blowing out Corey's head. No, never mind, I take that back. Kendall says he can't even see the scene. He just hears it. I would like you to remember some of the other witness statements you heard today of Jamie Ferguson and Vice Principal Lyndon Murphy. Those 2 witnesses say that they only heard 2 shots, when Kendall, being the only witness, saying that he heard 3. With Kendall not being able to see any of the scene, how are we supposed to use his eyewitness testimony as evidence? All the physical evidence, the gunshot, the wounds, the eyewitness testimony of Lyndon Murphy, is constant with self-defense. In the opening statement, the prosecution stated that Corey was brutally killed. Yeah, you heard both my defendant, Devin Kelmar, and Vice Principal Lyndon Murphy both say that Corey had lunged at him. The prosecution also described Devin as a deranged man. A deranged man who's fearing for his life, firing out of self-defense. If anyone lunged at me with a knife, I would fire back, wouldn't you? The second witness for the prosecution, Officer Lee Kim, said that the gun that Devin used had a hammer on it, as most guns do, of course. And when you pull back the hammer, that it fires all the rounds in the gun. This means that Devin didn't have a lot of time to think about what he was doing, because these shots were only seconds away, described by multiple witnesses. You just heard the closing statement that Devin was hunting his victim. Is Devin hunting his victim when he's going to his car to try to get away. They also said that Devin's parking in Corey's lot, where Corey usually parks. We already established that Devin can park where he wants. It's not Corey's lot. He has the freedom to do that. And then, another thing is that under the Constitution, my client, Devin, is presumed innocent. He remains innocent unless the prosecution proves his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution hasn't done that yet. The prosecution must prove that Devin did this with malice. They haven't. Devin showed no intention of killing Corey. He only took the gun out of the closet the day before, because on that night, Corey said, and I quote, "If you come to the basketball game, I'm going to slash you." As for the insanity claim, if he was trying to use it to get away with murder, why isn't he using it today? The prosecution must also prove that this is unlawful and without justification. If Corey initiated the fight and lunged at Devin, it's not unlawful or without justification to fire back to save your life. You may not particularly like Devin as a person, but that doesn't make him guilty of murder. If the evidence doesn't prove Devin's guilt, then what right do we have to convict him? Thank you.